I was insulin resistant. I had a nice tummy full of fat. I had visceral organs that were surrounded by fat, and they were trained to do that because of the way I had eaten for years.
Could we get into the weeds on the ketogenic approach, just a biology 101, as far as the different forms of fuel sources are concerned? Because we normally use glucose as a fuel source, but in the ketogenic approach, that's flipped on its head. You're using a different source of fuel. So if we could just put it into context for people, if they're not familiar with this ketogenic approach and with ketosis and ketones.
That framework for how energized is your body, how much extra fuel do you have to live your life today? I like to parallel it to a campfire. And if you are trying to build a campfire where you're going to stay warm all night, anybody who's done this knows that the goal is to get those logs at the bottom nice and hot and that really beautiful red fire. Because then, even if you fall asleep, the heat's gonna hold you through the night. That when you look at our bodies, there's a very similar parallel. That if a campfire filled with leaves or pine needles and you put a spark of fire to it, it's very pretty. It lights up and it goes into the air and there's even some smoke and it's kind of fun to look at. But it's quick. It's over. And I parallel that to a cell that's being fueled by sugar, by glucose, by carbohydrates. And when that's the only fuel your body gets to use, well, it's also very dirty. That fuel just keeps putting out that extra smoke and sparkles. And even though that was kind of a fun ride the first time you did it, now if the only thing you're putting on that fire is those leaves, it's hard to breathe. It's not fun. The excitement's over, and it really is not a sustainable place to keep everybody warm for the night. We're going to skip over protein right now. Well, let's do protein for a second. Protein is something people think they use as fuel, but it really isn't a fuel source. It is a repair source. When you put proteins into our body, we have to break them down into amino acids or near amino acids, and then we can use them to build parts of our body for repair. But to use them as energy for fuel is a really bad way to do life. In essence, you taking sticks, and I don't mean like hardy sticks. I mean kind of the sticks that come right after the leaves on that tree. If you put those together, that's about how often you would have to fuel your body with protein as a way to keep energy flowing. And this has been really important for people when I have, left the basics of a ketogenic diet and really gotten into people where they want to say, well, I like the high protein. And what they're really saying is the marketers for protein have done a better job of convincing me that that's healthy. And the science isn't what convinced them of that. It was the marketers that did that. Because the science is, if you want the best fuel source for a cell, you want a fat source to be the regular use of energy inside that cell. So a fat can be burned in the form of a triglyceride, a form of a fatty acid, or it can be broken down into a ketone. Either one of those is what the fuel line looks like when you're building that body's energy from fat. And it is the parallel to that big log that the first one is kind of hard to get going. And we've all been there where you can't quite get it going on a fire and you just sit there cold and you get frustrated because once that log gets going, it's easy. And we've all been to the easy side. We've seen people with, oh, look at the fire. They just put another log on the fire. It's so easy. But when you're the one making that first log burn, you can get frustrated with how it is to do that if somebody doesn't teach you how to get the first log going. And I really think that's the key to the ketogenic diet is if you're somebody who's been traveling around the sun a few times, I'm 52 years around the sun, and that life, even though I come from rural South Dakota where hog farming and we had a butcher for our food, I was raised on processed food. And so your cells are so used to the high insulin production that they have a memory in your body that says, when you put that corn flour. Oh, that's healthier than the white flour. I don't know. It's processed. And although a couple times a year, that might not be a bad idea, you're doing it every day because you live in a modern world where the access to that processed stuff makes life fast, easy, and you can rinse, repeat, and our taste buds really like it. So now your body is stuck on that. And when I showed up to the ketogenic diet, the reason I couldn't be ketones for so long is I was insulin resistant. I had a nice tummy full of fat. I had visceral organs that were surrounded by fat, and they were trained to do that because of the way I had eaten for years. So to get that first set of ketones, to get that first log to burn, I messed it up like every way possible. And every time I thought, oh, my blood sugar must be getting low, I'll just add a little bit. What I was really doing was delaying the moment that it was going to take for me to finally get on the side that the fat cells in my body would open up and you could start to circulate triglycerides and get fatty acids to burn in your cells, which is that first log of energy. But I will tell you, after that 26-mile ruck, I could feel it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should be tired. I am not tired. I feel great. And having read about it saying, this is what's supposed to happen. Why the hell isn't this happening? What's wrong with me? And what was wrong with me is, well, I'd birthed 3 children. That is a state of insulin resistance by definition. That's how you keep the baby in. That's how you grow the baby. So women, welcome to the other side. The insulin resistance is so easy after having a child. And then to get your cells to go backwards without compromising your bone health, without losing a bunch of muscle mass, somebody needs to sneak you the cliff notes, which is you need to fuel your cells on fat. Not only does it help that brain to repair, it is a sustainable energy where your focus in life is no longer on what am I going to eat next? What's the kind of food I'm going to have tomorrow? That obsession with food that you have to have if you're in a glucose-fed menu. Well, your fuel's only lasting a couple hours, so you have to stay in the cycle of constantly thinking about when you're eating this meal, where's the next one going to come from? And when you are fed on fat, when you finally have the logs burning in your mitochondria, I fast for 60 hours every week. And to say it's easy isn't nothing, but it's nothing compared to what I was fighting with when I was constantly thinking about how the heck am I going to keep up with a practice and raising kids and marriage and all this stuff and eat every 2 to 3 hours. Either I was going to be crabby or something had to give. It just wasn't possible to do all that with a fuel source that was on and off, on and off, on and off.
Well, you've mentioned the reduction of inflammation already. Can we talk more about this and also the increase in human growth hormone production whenever you ascribe to this low carb or a ketogenic diet? And perhaps we can include some of the other physiological benefits that come with being on this diet.
So if I had to rank, what do I think the benefits are? Okay, everybody loves the weight loss that comes when they first go into a state of ketosis. In fact, I tell patients, our brand, who is the Dr. Boz brand now, is if you're on the first time of the ketogenic diet, go for it. But that moment where you see everybody else doing success and you hear these sensational stories of reversing a cancer, reversing an autoimmune disorder, having chronic migraines that went away, that tinnitus, that ringing in your ears that's been there for 10 years, gone. If you're looking for the reversal of medical problems, you're going to need a medical grade ketogenic diet. You're going to need some instruction, not necessarily one-on-one from me, but here's the rules on how to get that. Because what I write about in the book, I mentioned weight loss a little bit, but it is all about what was happening inside those cells that were producing cancer. And why was my mom's muscle tone at 71 better 9 months into that story than it had been in 20 years? And it has everything to do with the question you asked. Number one, you cannot reverse that inflammation at a cellular level when the amount of insulin you're producing is excessive. It's just the opposite. It is going to coat the grime that will live around each cell. And you have millions of cells, right? So now you add up all of that grime, and that equates to things like Why does an autoimmune disorder begin in the first place? It is a cellular inflammatory mismatch going on in your bone marrow, in your lymph nodes, in your thyroid, in your gut. Wherever your immune system is attacking the wrong place, you've got the white blood cells that are inflamed and you have the tissue that's inflamed, and the white blood cells decide they're attack that part of the body. So the word inflammation has been marketed as, oh, this is anti-inflammatory. So when I go to answer questions like this, I really want your mind to be in a place. This is a cellular problem. It is a really tiny microscopic problem times a billion in your body. So to get it to go away, it isn't that you peak ketones for a couple of days and it's gone. You've been bathing these cells. You've been creating that grime for 20 years. Welcome to an internal medicine clinic. Welcome to the chronic disease management that I have seen line the walls of my clinic for the 25 years I've been doing this. To get that to go away, that cellular process needs to be the cleanest fuel possible. So go back to that campfire. They come up on the ketogenic diet. We teach them how to get that first log burning, and boom, they do great. They ride the wave of 2-3 weeks, whatever it is. But then the process of staying away from something that's very tempting, that's very rewarding, and now that you've been away from it a little while, you have a little bit of those carbs, and you get that party, you get that sparkling campfire again. And, taking care of broken brains for the first 15 years, a lane that many people don't think about is, yes, I took care of broken brains with migraines and post-chemotherapy and surgery and seizures and concussions, but I took care of a lot of addiction. And that behavioral component that says, how do I get somebody to not go back to the process, the sex, drugs, rock and roll, find something to abuse that they were doing that was injuring their brain. We get their brain better in one weekend of doing something they shouldn't do, and we reverse everything it took us 6 months to get them to do. So that behavioral component became really important in this journey of how do you coach people to get truly away from it. And that's the level of removal of inflammation that shows up at about that 4th, 5th, 6th week. The same moment where they're saying, oh, I read about this thing that I can do dirty keto and be just fine. Oh, I am fine. I will have a little bit of net carbs. I'm not going to do total carbs. And of course, what they don't realize is your cells have a memory. You spent those 20 years with that extra 25 pounds, your pancreatic cells are going to make too much insulin, and you're going to be right back at a flat line for weight loss, but more importantly, a flat line for the removal of the inflammation.
If you enjoyed that video, I know you'll get some value from this video right here.